All right, let's check out the Masks panel inside of CS4, and you're going to find it's right next to the Adjustments panel above the Layers palette. If you've lost it or closed it or changed your workspace, you can always go up to the Window menu and just go down to Masks, and you'll see it right there. Now, what the Masks panel does is it's a way of giving you some tools to work on your mask. So you first need a mask in order to use it, and it gives you tools to do things to those masks without having to take your brush and go into the detailed levels of the mask and really to know the tricks of the trade to get in there and work on your mask. It's a way of doing some very common tasks without requiring a whole lot of work. Now, in this example here, what we're going to do is I'm going to select the ladybug and the flower that she's on, and I'm going to put this over a black background. So the first thing I would do is we need to make a selection. So I'm going to take my quick selection tool, which was new inside of CS3. All right, and it works just like a brush. Just click and just drag. If it selects too much like it did up here, just hold down your Option key on Mac or Alt key on PC and click and drag there. And then let's do the same thing toward the bottom. You can see it's a really neat tool. It just makes the process of selecting much quicker, hence the name Quick Selection Tool. All right, so what we have now is a selection around this. What I'm going to do is add a mask to it. And I could always do this in my Layers palette, but now with the Masks palette, all you got to do is go up to the top and click on that little icon up there. Let me zoom in for you, make it a little bit easier to see. You can see it's the one to the left-hand side here. It says Add a Pixel Mask. All right, so if I click on that icon, it's going to add a mask to the layer. Now the problem is I want to put this over a black background, and we only had one background layer, and it right now it's showing us transparency underneath because we only had that one layer. So what we're going to do here is make a black background. I got a little keyboard shortcut for you here. This isn't new in CS4, but it's just a neat shortcut. If you hold down the Command key on the Mac or the Control key on a PC and you click on the new layer icon, it places a new layer below the layer that you were working on. All right, it just saves a step. You know, normally you'd click on the new layer icon and then you'd have to drag it below. This just saves a step and it just puts it right below. And then finally, I would set my foreground to black, grab my paint bucket tool here, and just click on it to fill it with black. Now, take a look at the mask. It doesn't look so good, right? See how it's all kinds of jaggy and everything? Well, that's where we can come into this Masks panel, and we can start to refine this mask, and we can start to do it in ways that we really never had available to us so quickly and so easily inside, other versions of Photoshop. So in order to work on the mask, you've got to first come over to your Layers palette, and you've got to click on it. And that enables all the tools in the Masks palette here. The first thing I'm going to go to is really my favorite one, which I think it's Mask Edge. And what this does is this opens up a dialog box that lets us have all these different settings to work on the edge of our mask. I'm going to reset them all to 0 here, and we'll start from scratch. All right, let's take this guy back to 0. And there we go. So I'm not going to go through what each and every one does. This dialog was actually new inside of CS3. All right, it was called Refine Edge, and what they're doing in CS4 is giving you the ability to use it on a mask now. But if you go down to the bottom, there's a little twirly arrow. If you open it up, you'll see there's descriptions down here for each and every one of these sliders. All right, so it tells you what it's going to do. There's also different backgrounds. You can view it on a selection. You can view it on that Quick Mask Rubylith overlay. I'm going to view it on the black background. Okay, here. So the first thing we need to do is radius. How much of the edge do we want to work with? How far away from the original selection do we want our changes in this dialog to take place? I'm going to go with nothing really more than 2 to 3 pixels here. So we're going to keep it right up around 2.5. Contrast isn't something we really need to do. We don't have soft edges here. In fact, our problem is the opposite. We have hard edges, and contrast would work good at fixing soft edges. We have harder edges, which we want to smooth. So this smooth setting, especially, take a look along here. See those kind of jaggy edges? When we start to increase the smooth setting, you're going to see it gets a lot better. Okay? So just take a look at the preview before and then after. That's just with a couple of settings. Feather is going to make the edges of your selection softer. Okay, we don't really want to do that yet because I still want to keep working on the edge here. I'm going to contract it a little bit by moving this to the left, not much more than 6 or 7, and that just brings the selection edge, it brings where I made it originally, it brings it inward just a little bit so I don't have any of the background poking through, and you'd probably notice it right around the ladybug here. All right, so let's take a look at our preview again. Turn it off before, turn it on. If you ask me, that's a pretty darn good change, and we really never had these tools available to us to work on your selection edges on a mask like this. All right, so having this dialog to be able to work on a mask is really very powerful. So I'm going to click OK. So that applies the changes to our mask on that layer. Now we can come back over here to the Masks palette, and there's a couple other settings here. Feather, we had that feather in the mask edge dialog box, but what it does is it softens it. I'll soften it not much more than 1 pixel. If I go any higher, see what happens? It kind of gets funky looking here. So we're going to just soften that by 1 pixel. And that's going to give a little bit of a smoother transition. And then we've also got density. Think of density as opacity on a mask. All right, it's a way to drop the opacity of the mask, which we really never had the ability to do before. All you've got to do is drag it over to the left, and it starts showing us what we were masking away. Okay, remember the original background? That's what we had originally, but we added the mask, and it hid the background, and it was showing us what? The black layer that was underneath. Well, now as I increase my density and I get it back toward 100%, we're bringing that mask back, and now we're seeing that black background. So just think of it as opacity of a mask. As you drag it to the left, you're dropping the opacity of the mask itself. So in the end, the Masks panel is really a way for us to apply some refinements and some changes to our masks without having to go in there and manually do all the detailed work.